My sister got pregnant by my husband and told everyone about it at my birthday party, but I knew she was pregnant by another guy and my husband was infertile, so I dove in with both of them. My name is Eleanor Whitman, and this was supposed to be my 35th birthday dinner. The private dining room at Bellamy's was bathed in soft candlelight, the clink of crystal glasses harmonizing with muted laughter. My husband, Graham, stood beside me, his hand resting gently on my shoulder as he raised his glass. To my beautiful wife, he began, his voice carrying that familiar charm that once made my heart flutter. Happy birthday, darling. Across the table, my sister, Lydia, shifted in her seat, her manicured fingers fidgeting with her water glass. She hadn't touched her champagne, which should have been my first clue. Actually, Lydia interrupted just as everyone was about to drink. I have an announcement to make. My mother, Margaret, beamed, already knowing. Of course, she knew, she always knew everything about Lydia first. I'm pregnant, Lydia's voice rang out across the room. The silence that followed lasted exactly 2 seconds before she added, and Graham's the father. I felt Graham's hand tighten on my shoulder, not in guilt, but in preparation for my reaction. They all expected hysteria, tears, maybe even a scene. The restaurant staff hovered nervously at the edges of the room. I took a slow sip of my champagne. That's interesting, I said, my voice steady. Very interesting indeed. Eleanor, my mother started, her tone already taking that scolding edge she'd perfected over the years, don't make a scene. I smiled, reaching for my purse. Oh, I wouldn't dream of it, Mother. In fact, I have my own announcement to make. I pulled out a cream-colored envelope. You see, I've been wondering why Graham and I couldn't conceive for the past 3 years. Lydia's triumphant smile faltered slightly. Graham's hand left my shoulder. Eleanor, this isn't the time, he said quietly, warning in his voice. Actually, it's the perfect time. I unfolded the medical report with careful precision. Because according to Dr. Matthews at the fertility clinic, my dear husband has what they call azoospermia, 0 sperm count. I looked directly at Lydia. In layman's terms, he's completely infertile. The sound of utensils clattering against plates echoed through the room. Lydia's face drained of color so quickly I thought she might faint. That's impossible, she stammered. The test must be wrong. That's what I thought too, I said, pulling out a second envelope. So I had him tested again. Different clinic, different doctor, same result. I smiled at Graham, who had gone completely still beside me. Would you like to see the dates, darling? Both tests were from last month. You had me tested without my knowledge, Graham's voice shook with anger. Oh, like you've been so honest with me? I turned to face him fully. 3 years of trying, 3 years of you telling me maybe I was the problem, 3 years of watching you comfort my sister through her visits while I cried myself to sleep. Margaret stood up abruptly. This is absolutely inappropriate. No, Mother. What's inappropriate is your precious Lydia being involved with my husband and then trying to pass off someone else's baby as his. I stood up, gathering my purse. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to walk out of here with my dignity intact, and you too, I looked between Lydia and Graham, can figure out how to explain to everyone why you lied. Graham grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. It was wrong, wasn't it? I leaned in close enough to smell his cologne, the same cologne I'd smelled on Lydia's jacket last month. Oh no, darling, I double-cheeked twice. I pulled my arm free. And I have so much more proof where that came from. As I walked toward the door, Lydia's voice cracked behind me. Eleanor, wait. I can explain. I paused at the doorway, turning back one last time. Save your explanation for your baby's real father, Lydia. I'm sure he'd love to hear it. The last thing I saw as I left was my cousin, Marianne, pulling out her phone, no doubt already dialing everyone in her considerable social network. By morning, everyone would know. And that was exactly what I wanted. Because justice isn't just about exposing lies, it's about watching them scramble to piece together a truth they can't possibly explain. And I was just getting started. 6 weeks earlier, I sat at my desk in the quiet of our shared study, staring at an open email thread that would unravel everything. It wasn't suspicion that led me to open Graham's laptop, it was desperation. 3 years of trying, of unanswered questions, of silence so dense it echoed. And there it was, left open by mistake. We need to be more cautious. E's starting to notice. L. Just an initial. Not Eleanor. Not my sister. Just a problem to be managed. The room was too quiet after I read it. Even the hum of the ceiling fan sounded accusatory. I printed the email. I stared at it long enough for the words to blur, for my chest to tighten in a way that felt like betrayal, but also clarity. The next morning, I texted my best friend, Hattie Monroe. Meet me at Cantor's. Don't ask questions. Just come. 20 minutes later, we sat in a corner booth at our usual cafe, the scent of cinnamon rolls mingling with the cool, fall air that drifted in from the open windows. Show me again, Hattie said, leaning over the table, squinting at the screen. This could mean anything. Right? Look at the timestamp, I said. Midnight. Why is my sister emailing my husband at midnight? She exhaled slowly. You think it's an affair? I think it's more than that, I said. I think it's calculated. And I think they've been at this a while. That day, I made my first stop, the fertility clinic. Dr. Matthews' office hadn't changed, still filled with the sterile scent of antiseptic and the quiet sorrow of too many unspoken disappointments. Mrs. Whitman, the receptionist, greeted, a flicker of recognition in her voice. It's been a while. I need copies of all test results, I said evenly. For me and my husband. Every record, every note. Please. Usually Mr. Whitman handles the paperwork, she said. I'm aware. But I am also a patient here, and I have a right to see our records. She hesitated, then nodded. 15 minutes later, I sat in my car, records spread across the passenger seat like a puzzle I'd been trying to solve for 3 years. The missing pieces were glaring. My records, intact, thorough, routine. Grams? Non-existent. No tests. No notes. No sperm analysis. He never took them. I called Hattie as I drove. He never even tested, I said quietly. 3 years, and he never got tested. Why would he do that? Because if I thought I was the problem, I said, then he never had to be. Control. That's what it always came down to. He was always the calm one. The one with the reasonable answers. The one who smiled just enough to make me question my doubts. But he had been lying about everything. I made a new appointment at a different clinic. This time, I didn't tell Graham. Instead, I planned a romantic evening, champagne, candles, a quiet dinner. The champagne was real, but his glass included a small dose of prescribed sedatives. Just enough to help him sleep off the stress. The clinic was discreet. 1 sample, 1 sleepless night. 2 weeks later, I held the test results in my hands. Azoospermia. Again. Verified by a second doctor. This time, no ambiguity, no mistake. That same week, I spotted Lydia at the very same clinic. She didn't see me, but I saw her walking out with a folder in one hand and the other resting on her stomach. I followed her to the parking lot. She got into a car driven by someone I didn't recognize. A tall man with sharp features and a quiet intensity. I took pictures. Later that night, I traced the license plate. His name was Calder Renshaw, a former boyfriend of Lydia's from college. Do you think she's actually pregnant? Hattie asked when I showed her the photos. Oh, I'm sure of it. She's been avoiding alcohol, making comments about fatigue and antibiotics. I scrolled through photos on my phone. But here's the part that Lydia doesn't know: Graham is infertile. Which means this child is Calder's, Hattie finished. And she's using it to trap Graham. To take him from me. To ruin me. But she doesn't know he's been lying to her too, I said. He can't be the father, no matter what story they spin. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I simply felt a new kind of resolve settle into my bones. They were both liars. And I had proof. I moved quietly in the weeks leading up to my birthday. Every step I took was deliberate. Every detail was part of the plan. The apartment lease was signed in secret. The lawyer retained through a recommendation from Hattie's cousin, a sharp-witted woman named Marcia Keene. The evidence, photographs, emails, voice recordings, was filed neatly into both digital folders and hard copies, backed up 3 times. I didn't just want Graham and Lydia exposed. I wanted the truth to be undeniable. I wanted consequences. I think you're ready, Hattie said the night before the dinner. We sat on her porch, sipping tea as the wind rustled the branches above. Tomorrow, I whispered, they think they've won. And the day after? They'll know they've lost everything. The private room at Bellamy's was filled with soft music and low chatter as guests arrived. Cousins, friends, family, acquaintances, they all smiled, unaware that the dinner table they gathered around was a stage. Graham had insisted on hosting. You deserve something beautiful, he had said with practiced sincerity. He was charming that evening, attentive, confident. As if the universe had declared him invincible. Lydia wore a pale rose dress that floated around her gently swelling stomach. She arrived with my mother, whose smile was far too bright. I watched them take their seats. I listened to the false laughter. And when Graham stood to toast me, I knew it was time. To Eleanor, he began, lifting his glass, whose grace and strength make everything she touches better. Happy birthday, my love. The table clinked in approval. I smiled, graciously accepting the flattery. I let the room settle. And then I stood. Thank you, Graham, I said softly. You've always had a gift for words. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. I turned to Lydia. And thank you, Lydia, for being here. It means so much that we can celebrate as a family. She beamed. Of course. I wouldn't miss it for anything. I'm sure, I replied. Especially with your big news. Her smile froze. The air changed. I thought we'd toast to that too, I continued. To new beginnings. To children and truth. Lydia's eyes flickered. But before that, I do have something to share, I said. Something I discovered recently. I reached into my bag and pulled out 2 envelopes. 3 years ago, Graham and I began trying to start a family. For 3 years, we wondered. We blamed timing, stress, bad luck. Graham's expression shifted. But eventually, we sought answers. Or at least, I did. I opened the first envelope and removed a medical report. According to Dr. Matthews, my husband has a medical condition, azoospermia. It means his body doesn't produce any sperm. The room fell into silence. I didn't want to believe it, I continued, so I went to a second clinic. Without telling him. Same diagnosis. I looked around the table. My cousin Leonard dropped his fork. In short, Graham is biologically incapable of fathering a child. I turned back to Lydia, whose face had gone ghostly white. So imagine my surprise when Lydia announced she was pregnant. And that Graham was the father. I removed the second envelope and held it up. But you know what's even more surprising? The results of a paternity test between Lydia and someone else. Calder Renshaw. The name hit the table like a stone. Turns out, he's the father of the child she's carrying. Not Graham. No, Lydia whispered. I continued calmly, I know you've been meeting Calder. I have photographs. I know you used his insurance for prenatal care. I have receipts. Graham looked as if the ground had shifted beneath him. And I know, Mother, I turned to Margaret, that you helped Lydia hide it. That you funded her appointments. That you encouraged the affair. You don't understand. No, I said, my voice firm. I do. I finally do. I turned to the guests. My family didn't just betray me, they gaslit me. They watched me grieve a future I couldn't have, all while building a future behind my back. I turned to Graham. You let me believe I was broken. Eleanor, please. No more lies, I said. Because tonight, the truth is the guest of honor. And then I left. Not in anger, not in tears. But with quiet dignity. Behind me, chaos bloomed, questions, arguments, stunned silence. But I didn't look back. Because justice had already started speaking. I didn't sleep the night of the dinner. Not because of grief or uncertainty, but because something strange was settling in my chest, something like clarity. I stayed at Hattie's, sitting by her fireplace with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, watching the embers glow like quiet victories. By morning, my phone buzzed constantly. Missed calls from Graham. Dozens of messages from Lydia, from my mother, from relatives. Some pleaded. Some scolded. Others wanted the story. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called Marcia. They're going to try to spin this, I told her. And you, she replied, are going to stay silent, steady, and focused. Because the moment someone swings in desperation, we strike. Within 48 hours, I received confirmation, Graham's company had launched an internal investigation. An anonymous tip, mine, had reached the board, along with copies of financial records and fertility clinic reports. That tip detailed more than his infertility. It detailed inconsistencies in quarterly reports, personal expenses coded as business reimbursements, a luxury vehicle paid for through shell accounts. Everything I had found in those months of searching, every document, every bank statement, was now in the hands of forensic auditors. Hattie texted me later that afternoon. Margaret just left a voicemail. Says she didn't know. I knew better. My mother always knew. It was never just neglect. It was favoritism wrapped in polished smiles. I was the dependable daughter. Lydia, the adored. I was useful, she was cherished. But this time, they'd picked the wrong person to silence. By the end of the week, Graham had been placed on administrative leave. Lydia had deactivated her social media accounts. My mother stopped calling. I moved into my new apartment overlooking the park. Simple. Clean. Mine. The day after I signed the final lease, I received a message from Calder Renshaw. I don't know you, but I think we need to talk. We met at a quiet coffee shop near the clinic where I'd seen him last. He was polite, careful with his words. His hands trembled slightly as he stirred his tea. She told me she was single, he said. She said the baby was mine. Then she said it wasn't. Then she said it might be. She lied, I said. To all of us. She asked me not to tell anyone. She used my insurance. I have a partner now. We've been building a future. This could destroy everything. I'm not here to destroy anyone, I replied. Just to set things right. He hesitated, then handed me a signed consent form for a paternity test. I need to know, he said. For myself. And for the child. That evening, I forwarded the form to Ryland, a colleague of Marcia's who specialized in family law. 2 days later, the results came in. Calder was the father. I could have sent it to everyone. I could have made a public declaration. But I didn't. Instead, I sent one message to Lydia. Calder is the father. He knows. And so do I. I didn't expect a reply. But an hour later, she sent 3 words. Please forgive me. I stared at the screen. I didn't feel anger. Not anymore. I felt distance, like she was a memory I'd already shelved away. I wrote back. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. I wish you peace. But I'm not coming back. I never heard from her again. That night, Graham showed up at my new apartment. I didn't open the door. But I watched him through the peephole, shoulders slumped, eyes shadowed. He stood there for several minutes before sliding a manila envelope under the door and leaving. Inside were photos. Letters. A note. You never deserved any of this. I let fear decide for me. And it cost me everything. I'm sorry. For a moment, I stood still. Then I walked to my desk, slid the envelope into the drawer, and closed it. His apology didn't undo the betrayal. But it confirmed what I'd known all along. The truth always arrives late, messy, but undeniable. And now, they had to live in it. The final stages of rebuilding were not loud or grand. They were quiet moments, slow, deliberate choices that stitched my life back together. After Graham's arrest, the company issued a formal statement. The charges included financial fraud, misappropriation of funds, and ethical violations. He pled guilty. He would serve time, not just in prison, but in reputation. The man who once curated perfection now faced quarterly audits and mandatory restitution. His name became a whisper in professional circles, a cautionary tale for younger executives. Ryland sent me the final settlement agreement 2 months later. 7 figures. It didn't feel like a windfall, it felt like balance. Not revenge. Not fortune. Just the restoration of everything I'd lost, converted into choice. With that choice, I made my first donation to the Brookfield Foundation for Fertility Recovery, a nonprofit that provides counseling and medical support to women navigating fertility deception and trauma. The director called me personally. Most of our donors remain anonymous, she said. But if you ever want to speak at one of our events, I will, I said. One day. Marianne visited a week later, carrying a houseplant and an envelope. From Graham's sister, she said. She found it in his office. Inside were more photos, snapshots from better days. A note from Lydia, dated years ago. You deserve better. We deserve better. She's too career-focused. She'll never give you what we can have. They had planned it all. I placed the letter in a folder and locked it away. Not to hide it, but to acknowledge it. Their choices were part of my past, but not my future. Hattie helped me decorate the apartment. Light curtains. New linens. A bookshelf where I placed framed photos of my father, my friends, and a childlike version of myself, the girl I used to be before trust was fractured. One afternoon, a package arrived from the fertility clinic. Inside was a handwritten note. Dear Ms. Whitman. Your courage has inspired our entire staff. As a token of our appreciation and in light of your support for women's health, we would like to offer you free services should you decide to continue your fertility journey. It made me pause. Not because I longed for motherhood at that moment, but because I could finally consider it freely, on my own terms. No secrets. No coercion. No shame. When Hattie and Marianne came over for dinner that week, I shared the news. "Do you think you'll do it?" Marianne asked. "Maybe," I said. "But only when I'm ready. Not to fix anything. Not to prove anything. Just because I can." They toasted with me that night. To peace. To choice. To reclaiming everything that had been stolen piece by piece. I still get questions sometimes from those who heard about the scandal. Was it worth it? Do you miss them? Would you ever forgive? Here's what I tell them. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to let someone else carry your future. It's knowing you've spoken your truth and then building something better with it. And justice isn't a courtroom or a settlement. Justice is watching the people who betrayed you confront their own lies. And realizing you no longer need to carry them. I visited the old neighborhood once. Walked past the house where Margaret hosted holiday dinners. It was quiet now. For sale. A new family would live there one day, unaware of what had happened inside those walls. And that felt right. Because I didn't want vengeance. I wanted closure. And I got it. As the sun set, I returned home to my apartment, where peace lived now. On the wall above my desk hung a single photo, me, age 6, grinning without apology. Before the world taught me to silence myself. Before I learned what betrayal felt like. Now, that girl and I are back in step. And every day I wake up in my own space, breathe my own air, and look toward the future I created with my own hands, I remember. The best justice isn't just truth revealed. It's freedom claimed. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.